The basement door slammed shut above me, plunging me into darkness. I heard the distinct click of the deadbolt sliding into place, followed by my father's heavy footsteps moving away. My name is Emma, and at 23, I never thought I'd find myself locked in my parents' basement like some dark family secret. You'll stay there until you learn your lesson. My mother's voice drifted through the door, cold and unfamiliar. Maybe this will teach you to stop embarrassing this family. My crime? I'd refused to quit my job at the local animal shelter to take the corporate position my father had arranged at his friend's company. It wasn't the first time I'd defied their carefully laid plans for my life, but it was the first time their disappointment had turned to something darker. I fumbled in the darkness for my phone, but it wasn't in my pocket. In their rage, they'd taken everything: my phone, my bag, even my jacket. The basement was cold, the kind of deep chill that seeps into your bones. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to make sense of how my life had come to this point. Mrs. Peterson, our 72-year-old neighbor, had installed security cameras last week after a series of car break-ins on our street. Her camera had a perfect view of our driveway and front door. I remembered her proudly showing me the new system, explaining how it recorded everything 24/7. At the time, I just smiled politely, never imagining those cameras would become my salvation. The first day was the hardest. I could hear life continuing normally above me: phone calls, TV shows, even my mother hosting her weekly book club. Nobody questioned my absence. Through the tiny basement window, I watched feet passing by on the sidewalk, wondering if anyone would notice something was wrong. Emma ran away. I heard my mother tell someone on the phone, her voice perfectly practiced in concern. "We're so worried. She's been acting out lately. You know how young people can be." I wanted to scream, to bang on the walls and let everyone know I was here, trapped in my own home by the people who were supposed to protect me. But I knew that would only make things worse. My parents had mastered the art of appearance, respected members of the community, successful business owners, perfect family. Nobody would believe the truth. The only food I had was what they'd pushed through the cat flap they'd installed in the door: protein bars and bottles of water, like I was some animal they were keeping barely alive. "Until you agree to take the job," my father would say each time, his voice stern through the door. "This is for your own good, Emma. You're throwing your life away at that shelter." By the third day, I was losing track of time. The darkness played tricks on my mind, making hours feel like days. The only constant was Mrs. Peterson's security light that came on every evening, casting a faint glow through the small window. I'd watch that light, holding onto it like a lifeline. What my parents didn't know was that Mrs. Peterson didn't just have cameras. She watched them obsessively. Every morning, she'd review the footage while drinking her coffee, keeping track of the neighborhood's comings and goings. She'd notice that I hadn't left the house, despite my parents' claims. She'd see that no one had come or gone through any door or window. The truth was being recorded, frame by frame. On what I think was the fourth day, I heard Mrs. Peterson's voice through the basement window. "Emma? Are you down there, dear?" Her voice was quiet but clear. My heart leaped into my throat. "Mrs. Peterson," I whispered back, pressing close to the window. "Yes, I'm here. They locked me in." "I know, dear. I've seen everything. The police are on their way. Just hold on a little longer." I slid down the wall, tears streaming down my face. Someone knew. Someone had seen. The carefully constructed facade my parents had built was about to crumble. And for once, I wasn't worried about being the one to break it. I heard sirens in the distance growing closer. Above me, footsteps quickened, voices raised in panic. My father's angry shouts, my mother's shrill protests. Then the sound of the front door being forced open, multiple footsteps entering our perfect family home. The basement. I heard Mrs. Peterson's voice, stronger now. "She's in the basement. I have 4 days of footage showing they never let her out." The deadbolt clicked and light flooded down the stairs. As I shielded my eyes, I saw uniformed officers descending, their flashlights sweeping the darkness. Behind them, I could see my parents being held in the living room, their faces a mix of rage and disbelief. Mrs. Peterson stood at the top of the stairs, her tablet in hand, already showing the footage to another officer. The perfect evidence of my parents' perfect crime, caught by a neighbor's caring eyes. As they helped me up the stairs, my legs shaky from days of confinement, I caught my mother's eye. "How could you?" she hissed. "We're your parents." I straightened mine back, finding strength I didn't know I had. Parents don't lock their children in basements, I said, my voice hoarse but clear. And they don't get to decide what makes someone a disappointment. The days following my rescue were a blur of police statements, medical examinations, and concerned social workers. I stayed with Mrs. Peterson, who turned out to be exactly the support system I needed. Her small yellow house, filled with cat figurines and the constant smell of fresh cookies, became my safe haven. You know, she said one morning over tea, I didn't install those cameras because of car break-ins. She patted my hand gently. I've been watching your parents for years. The way they treated you. I knew something wasn't right. I just needed proof. The local news had picked up the story, though they kept my identity private. Prominent business couple arrested for false imprisonment of adult daughter. The headlines were everywhere. My parents' perfect reputation was crumbling, and their friends were scrambling to distance themselves. My father's business partner, the one who'd offered me the job that started this nightmare, publicly denounced them. I had no idea they would go to such lengths, he told reporters. The position was merely a suggestion, not something to imprison someone over. My phone, which the police had retrieved from my parents' bedroom, was flooded with messages. Most were from family members, split between those horrified by what had happened and those who insisted I was overreacting. They were just trying to help you, my aunt wrote. You're destroying the family by pressing charges. I deleted those messages without responding. The animal shelter where I worked became my sanctuary. My boss, Sandra, welcomed me back with open arms and fierce protectiveness. She even promoted me to volunteer coordinator, the position I'd been working toward before everything happened. Your parents called here multiple times while you were away, Sandra told me, choosing her words carefully. They tried to quit on your behalf, said you found a better opportunity. I knew something was wrong. You'd never leave without saying goodbye to the animals. Working with the shelter animals helped me heal. There was something therapeutic about caring for creatures who'd also experienced trauma but still found the strength to trust and love again. I spent extra time with a 3-legged German shepherd named Max who'd been rescued from an abusive home. We were both survivors, learning to navigate our new realities. Mrs. Peterson's security footage became the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. The videos were damning, showing my parents going about their daily lives while their daughter was locked away, hosting dinner parties, attending social events, all while maintaining the lie that I had run away. The most shocking clip was from the second day of my imprisonment. It showed my mother gardening right outside the basement window, humming to herself while I was trapped below. She'd later told police she was teaching me a valuable lesson about responsibility. My parents' lawyers tried to spin it as a family disagreement that got out of hand. They were concerned of their daughter's future, the lawyer argued. Their methods, while extreme, came from a place of parental concern. The prosecutor, a fierce woman named Ms. Martinez, wasn't having any of it. Parental concern doesn't involve false imprisonment, she countered. This was about control, pure and simple. One morning, as I was feeding Max at the shelter, Sandra called me into her office. A letter had arrived from my father's company. I opened it with shaking hands, expecting more threats or manipulation. Instead, I found a check, a significant one, with a note from the board of directors. As compensation for the distress caused by our former CEO's actions, we would like to offer our support to the animal shelter's rehabilitation program. We understand this is where your true passion lies. I sat there, staring at the check, tears blurring my vision. The money that had been meant to control me was now going to help the very cause my parents had tried to force me to abandon. It felt like poetry. Mrs. Peterson helped me establish a new program at the shelter with the funds. One specifically focused on helping animals from abusive situations. We named it Second Chances, and Max became our mascot. You see, Mrs. Peterson said, watching me work with a newly rescued cat. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us exactly where we're meant to be. She was right. Despite everything, or perhaps because of it, I was finally building the life I'd always wanted. My parents had tried to break my spirit, but they'd only made me stronger. As I watched Max playing with shelter volunteers, his 3 legs not slowing him down one bit, I realized we'd both found our way to something better than mere survival. We found our purpose. The preliminary hearing was approaching, and while I was nervous about facing my parents in court, I wasn't afraid anymore. Their power over me was gone, shattered like the perfect family image they'd tried so hard to maintain. "Ready for tomorrow?" Mrs. Peterson asked, bringing me another cup of tea. I looked at the security camera footage on her tablet, the evidence that had saved me, and nodded. Ready. The courthouse was packed the day of the preliminary hearing. My parents sat at the defendant's table, both wearing expensive suits and neutral expressions they'd perfected over years of business meetings. They looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than the towering figures who had locked me away. Mrs. Peterson sat directly behind me, her presence steady and reassuring. The shelter staff had come too, including Sandra, who took the morning off to show support. Even Max was there, now officially certified as my emotional support animal, lying calmly at my feet. When I took the stand, my mother's facade cracked slightly. I saw her flinch as I described those days in the basement, the cold, the hunger, the sound of life continuing above while I sat in darkness. My father stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched as if he could wish away the truth of what he'd done. "And what made you think your parents would actually harm you?" my parents' lawyer asked during cross-examination, his tone suggesting I was being dramatic. I met his gaze steadily. "They already had," I replied. "Every time they chose their reputation over my happiness, every time they tried to force me into their perfect mold, they were causing harm. The basement was just the physical manifestation of what they'd been doing my entire life." The evidence was overwhelming. Mrs. Peterson's footage played on the courtroom screens, showing my parents' casual cruelty in high definition. The medical reports detailed the effects of my confinement: mild malnutrition, vitamin D deficiency, anxiety disorder. The prosecution presented a pattern of controlling behavior stretching back years. My parents took a plea deal: 3 years in prison, suspended sentences, mandatory counseling, and permanent restraining orders. Some thought it was too lenient, but I didn't need them to suffer. I just needed them to stay away. "I hope you understand what you've done to this family," my mother said during her statement to the court. "Everything we did was for you." I stood up, Max pressing against my leg supportively. "No," I said, my voice clear and strong. "Everything you did was for yourselves. But thank you. You taught me exactly what kind of person I don't want to be." 6 months later, the Second Chances program at the shelter was thriving. We'd helped rehabilitate dozens of animals and found them loving homes. Max had become something of a local celebrity, his story of overcoming abuse inspiring others to adopt special needs pets. Mrs. Peterson had become a regular volunteer, spending her mornings helping socialize nervous animals. "They just need someone to believe in them," she'd say, gently coaxing scared cats out of their shells, "just like you did." The basement of my parents' house had been converted into a temporary shelter space while they were in prison. Their perfect home, the site of my imprisonment, was now a place of healing and hope. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. 1 year to the day after my rescue, I received a letter from my mother. Her handwriting was shaky, different from her usual precise script. She wrote about her therapy sessions, about finally recognizing the damage she'd done. She asked for forgiveness, not for her sake, she claimed, but so I could find peace. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box with the others she'd sent. Maybe someday I'd be ready to read them properly, to consider her words. But not yet. My peace hadn't come from forgiveness. It had come from freedom. That evening, I sat on Mrs. Peterson's porch, watching the sunset while Max played in her garden. The security cameras were still there, now serving their original purpose of neighborhood watch. Sometimes I caught myself looking at them, not with fear, but with gratitude. "You know," Mrs. Peterson said, bringing out her famous cookies, "when I installed those cameras, I never imagined they'd help save someone's life. But I always knew you were meant for more than what they planned for you." I smiled, scratching Max behind his ears. "We all were," I said, watching him navigate the garden confidently on his 3 legs. Sometimes you just need someone to see you, really see you, to find your way out of the dark. The shelter was hosting an adoption event the next day. We'd named it From Darkness to Light, and all the proceeds would go to helping more animals find their second chances. My story had inspired other shelters to start similar programs, creating a network of support for both animals and people escaping abuse. As the sun set, casting long shadows across Mrs. Peterson's garden, I felt a deep sense of peace. My parents had tried to lock away what they saw as my defiance, but they'd actually set me free, free to be who I was meant to be, free to help others find their way out of their own dark places. Max rested his head on my lap, his eyes full of trust and love. We both found our light, our purpose, our family. Not the one we were born into, but the one we chose. The one that chose us back. And that made all the difference.